What's up, SC Nation? So, a question came up. Ramsey, and let's fix this. There we go. What are some red flags you see when people are interviewing? So, I figured I'll answer that in the best way I can. So, starting with the first red flag is the interviewee doesn't download a freemium before talking to the hiring manager. Most organizations right now, especially in SaaS, they have a freemium available on their website. And one of the first questions I get asked in interviews is, what do you know about us? What have you learned so far? And it's always good to say, I downloaded the freemium and played with it. If they don't have it, you can watch YouTube videos about the product. But we need to understand why we want to be there and what we know about the company. And if they found out you didn't download the freemium, that's generally speaking a red flag. Second red flag that I see is a lot of people don't ask questions during the interview. So the interview is a discovery call for both the hiring manager and also the sales engineer. And if we don't have any questions, trying to find out if that's a cable right here. If we don't have any questions to figure out if we're the right fit, or anything like, hey, what's the hiring manager's philosophy? How many people does he manage or she manages? There are a lot of questions that we should be asking. And if we don't ask any of those questions, it shows that we have zero interest or we just bad at our job. So have questions ready. And also, when you're talking to the hiring manager, they're going to say things that would spark some new questions. Listen to what they're saying. Ask your own questions based on what they're saying. Interviews are better when they're conversations than interrogations. So turn it into conversation as much as you can. And for the third and fourth red flag of the day, I would say they are taking too long to answer a question. And I don't mean like pausing to answer a question. I mean like actually answering in run-on sentences going on for hours. And then not checking in as you're answering questions. It's important that when we're talking to the hiring manager, we take pauses as we're talking. It's the same as a presentation or anything like that. They ask the question, we want to answer that question in the shortest way possible through sharing a story if possible. And then we have to pause and check in. Make sure we are answering the question that they asked, not answering a question of our own belief. So take a breath, make sure you answer correctly, answer succinctly, and then make sure you answer the right question by asking, was that the question you're asking? I do that quite often, and I like to laugh when I'm doing that because, I don't know, makes me seem human, and generally speaking, they want to assure you that you answered the right question or you're on track to answering the right question. And that brings me to point number, 5, disengaged body language. Generally speaking, I want to see that the person is interested in the company. If they're sitting back, leaned back, it's not really a good sign. Sure, comfortable, but it's not a good sign that you care. You don't have to be nervous. We don't have to be afraid, but we have to be interested. And we show that we're interested by leaning forward and listening intently. So we're leaning forward, we're having a conversation, we're talking to the person on the other side of the interview. And if I'm interviewing you, I want to know that you care. I want to know that you're interested and you want the job. And showing me that you're interested through body language, that's too dark, is a good way of doing that. Showing me that you're disinterested through body language is a red flag for at least me. And that brings me to the next point, which will be being caught in a lie. And my note here specifically was about something on your resume that doesn't match your actual experience. So let me dig into that a little bit more. I've seen resumes where they mention a certain skill several times. When a resume mentions a skill several times, my assumption is that they know that skill. Let's say Python. Someone says Python 6 different times on the resume. I assume that they've used it quite a bit and they're very proficient at it. So when I ask them about it and their response is, well, I only used it once or twice, my thought is, why is it 7 times on your resume? If you're familiar with something, I don't mind you saying that you're familiar with a skill. And when I talk about resumes with my clients, we always talk about skill not being binary. It's either you have it or you don't. You have different levels of skills. So I don't like to have bullet points with skills. The bullet point would be familiar with Python, JavaScript, whatever. Excellent knowledge of MPLS, for example. If you'll find that on my resume. So if you're only familiar with something, mention it once. Familiar with Python. You don't need to mention it a million times. But beyond that, being caught in a lie is a red flag in general, because if you don't know, you should say that you don't know. It's okay not to know. Nobody knows everything. I've been doing this for 8 years. If someone asks me something about my own company, I might not know. And the answer is, I don't know, I will get back to you on that, or I will dig into that. If you're in an interview and you don't know something, it's fine to say, I don't know, and then share your thoughts on how you would go about figuring it out. Or share your logic about what you think the answer is, although you're unsure. That's totally fine, as long as they know that you're not lying about it, not pretending that you know. Now, this has nothing to do with the video in itself, but I wanted to show you Lebanese ma'ani. Delicious. Not very healthy, but delicious. And I wanted to talk about, well, I don't know which number it is. I'll put the number somewhere. But being unprepared for the interview. I already mentioned not downloading the Fremium, playing around with it, but simply just researching about the company. What products are they selling? What problems are they solving? What industries they're selling into? And talking about preparation, I wanted the feeling that you actually prepared for the interview by thinking through the questions that you will be asked. Why are you sharing certain information, not others? Why are you sharing facts versus stories? When I'm talking to someone, I want to know that they actually put some thought into what they're going to be asked, into what they're going to ask. And if they don't, that just implies that during customer meetings, they might not have done any research before going to a customer meeting. So we all need to be prepared all the time. With practice, we won't need to, but the thing about interviews is we do them once every blue moon. So we're not practiced enough in interviews, which means we need to put some extra effort into preparing ahead of time. And let's go to the seventh red flag. It's being rude in general to anyone within the organization. One guy, we were looking for a salesperson to replace the salesperson that I had who got promoted to director. We were still doing interviews in person, and this person rang the doorbell for the office. I knew it was him, so I went and opened the door for him. Reached out to shake his hand and introduce myself. He barely looked at me while he was shaking my hand and said, "I'm here to see the director." It's like, alright, fine. Walked him to where the director is. The director comes out from his office to shake that person's hand. That person was so intent in shaking that, like, there was a difference in the way he shook my hand and the way he shook the director's hand. And he's applying for a salesperson position, not an SE position, but the story still applies. And during the introduction, like, "Oh, I'm the sales director," or I'm the salesperson looking for the job. We're the people who make things happen. And I was standing right there next to him. Like, I vetoed that person. He did not get the job. I don't think he cared much. He was already set. But I had the capacity to veto. So it doesn't matter who it is that you're talking to, whether it's the recruiter on the first call, whether it's anybody. If you're going in person, whether it's the admin assistant sitting at the front desk, doesn't matter who it is. We still have to be nice to everybody, not to almost. Nice to everybody we're interacting. Because it also carries over as sales engineers. We cannot be rude to the admins who are working with us. We cannot be rude to users who might use our product once in a while and not power users. So we just have to be good people, basically. Be a nice person when you're going to meet people. Be happy to be there. And then we have the 9th red flag is not listening to the interviewer's answers. So, or discussion in general. A lot of times interviewers tend to make, especially for sales engineers, tend to make the interview more of a conversation, which is a goal that interviewees should have. But then a lot of interviewees are not listening to whatever that person has to say. And we can tell because they either zone out or because they are asking a question that I just mentioned a second ago, like I answered a second ago. We can tell who's listening and who's not, especially on Zoom. So we have to go, the interviewee has to go through the extra effort of making sure that they let the person know we are listening to what you're saying. And there are multiple ways to do that through active listening techniques, like repeating what the person's saying, paraphrasing what the person's saying, confirming as they're talking through the call that, yeah, I can hear you, oh, that's interesting, things like that. And the last red flag is a thank you note. We're supposed to send thank you notes after the interview to every single person. Now a lot of companies for some reason are not sharing the interviewers' emails, but you can find them on LinkedIn. You can message them on LinkedIn. They might not see it, but you can message them. If you can't find them on LinkedIn, you can't find their email, respond to the recruiter and say, like, hey, I'm trying to thank this person, please can you make sure he gets this message, or let him, or provide me his email or her email so that I can thank them properly in email one-to-one. Now, these are the 10 red flags. I've also have pink flag in here and yellow flags. I don't know why I decided pink flags. It just seemed like the right color. Yellow flags is because of soccer and yellow cards. So the severity level is different. Pink is a little bit less severe than red, a little bit more. Pink flag, a little bit less severe than red, more severe than yellow. And here are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. And by the way, if you're enjoying this, hit the like button, share, subscribe. But let me know, more importantly, let me know what you think. What do you see as red flags, pink flags, and yellow flags? So the pink flags is not checking the website for success stories from this company. Like a lot of companies, they spend a lot of time on marketing. They spend a lot of time on sharing case studies, white papers, customer success. If you're coming to interview with me, and I'm the SE, I'm not even the hiring manager. If I'm just the SE and you've reached that point, you still haven't looked at white papers to have conversations with me in a better fashion, or looked at stories, customer success stories, it shows me that you're maybe not as interested as you may be pretending to be. And I talked about not knowing the CEO's name in a different earlier on, but it is important that I don't know every CEO's name, but if I'm applying to Radware, I go on the Wikipedia or go on Google and search for the CEO's name in case they come up and mention. Now, yellow flags. Messy background. This is common sense, but for some reason I've been in interviews where someone has a mess behind them. They have a towel hanging off of the door frame, like a closet door. I can tell that it's a mess. I personally don't like virtual backgrounds. I prefer to clean my background a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I have scuff marks on the walls of my office. You can use a blurry background if you want. I personally don't like them, but a lot of people use them. Even hiring managers use them. So if you don't have time to clean your background, use a virtual one. Another yellow flag is not taking notes. It's like any discovery call. I want you to be taking notes. I don't veto someone because they're not taking notes, but I prefer seeing someone take notes. For me personally, it's a way for me to actually actively listen to people and repeat what they have to say. Also, the reason I find taking notes, and this is specifically for sales engineers, is important, is because we need those notes for the next time we talk to somebody else within the company. Like, hey, I was asked, oh yeah, James asked me that same question, or Ginny asked me that same question. Or Ginny said this in the last time I talked to her. What are your thoughts about? So you can use them to have conversations, whether you're referring to what somebody else said or you're asking questions based on what somebody else said. Another yellow flag is not connecting on LinkedIn. We should be connecting with people on LinkedIn, especially those who interviewed us. They are a connection. We're sales engineers. If it was a different role, maybe I'd say like, don't worry about it. But as sales engineers, we need to connect with our customers. We need to connect with hiring managers. So connect with people on LinkedIn. Again, not a deal breaker. So some people don't like to use LinkedIn. That's fine. And number 4, cuatro. It's a gut feeling. Not based on science or anything like that. If I like someone or not like someone. As a hiring manager or as a fellow SE, I need to work with someone I like. They don't have to think the same way I think. They don't have to be like me, but I have to like them. And we like people from all different kinds and places. So as long as I like them, and I think they have a good work ethic, and I have a good feeling about them, I would say yes. If I have a bad feeling about them, I wouldn't endorse them. I wouldn't be their champion to get into the company. I wouldn't be against them. I just wouldn't be for them either. So these are multiple flags: red, pink, and yellow. What other color would you have used? What's a green flag, actually? Let me ask you this. What is something that you see that you immediately say, we have to hire that person? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. Again, like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it if you think it's useful. If you have a friend who actually committed one of those flags, sins, whatever you want to call them, share it with them so it's not information coming from their friend, because people tend to listen to strangers more than friends for some reason. So check it out, share it, and I will see you next time. Get back to work. Peace.